Um, well, I don't know where Max is. I don't normally start this, but it's week 7 of.
Wait! Don't start. Whew. I just got out of like a 20-car pileup. I barely escaped with my life. I don't.
Yeesh.
Whew. Well, anyway, I'm here now. So it's week 7 of GMC football. I'm Max Earl. With me is Beck Lucas. We barely are here, but we are. And we've got analysis on all the games this week, as well as a new segment we are doing, which is MVPs of every game of the week. Last week should be very interesting, and we'll start off just looking at Lakota East game from last week, where I think it's safe to say they smoked Middletown at home.
Yeah, wasn't close at all, maybe in the first quarter, but 50-23, putting up 50 points in a hurricane. I don't know if that's at fault of Middletown's defense or is East offense just that good. I got to say, I think it's the latter. I mean, JT Kitten has really hit his stride these past couple of weeks. You saw it at Fairfield, putting up 59 points, throwing 5 touchdowns in that game. And even in the sloppy weather, it's raining. It's been raining for a while. The field is damp. He still just looked comfortable in the pocket, delivering the ball downfield. And the receivers did a great job of catching the ball and holding on to it, even in that rain, in that mud, and that slop. So just really good job from this East offense.
Yeah, and I was kind of shocked with how the game played out there. I really thought it was going to be a sloppy back and forth, running the ball kind of game, and they ended up airing it out. It seemed like both teams even weren't scared of throwing the ball downfield. Obviously, Middletown had to try to get those 2 receivers, Chandler Shields and Maximilian Johnson, involved. But I think credit to East defense as well. They pretty much shut those guys down. Obviously, Chandler Shields had a few catches out of the slot in that curl route. Nothing too crazy. Maximilian Johnson had that one big catch. But other than that, I think credit to East secondary for shutting those guys down. And, I mean, East was not scared to air out the ball at all in the rain.
No, I mean, JT Kitten, we predicted that he would have less than 100 passing yards. He went almost 200. And like you were talking about, the 2 receivers, Chandler Shields and Maximilian Johnson, on paper they had a good game. But all those catches and those big plays and those touchdowns came from when they were really behind in the later part of the game. And just it came when it was too little too late. And it's just rough day for Middletown.
Yeah, and another thing, that East defense was able to get 3 turnovers, which is the most they've had in a while in a single game. And obviously a pick 6, which was called back. But, I mean, man, Connor Cruz and Cole Miranda, those 2 safeties have been stepping it up these last 2 games. And, I mean, this secondary has really kind of flourished into one that can really compete against those teams that are really airing out the ball. And I think they're right in a spot right now where they feel confident that they can take on anybody in the GMC.
Yeah, I mean, last year, just 2 interceptions on the whole season, and this week they had 3 in one game. It's been real fun to watch that secondary just come into their own and dominate games against really good teams.
Yeah, and just one final thing. At the end of that game, obviously they were up by a lot. They put in some of those backups. Got to say, backup quarterback Logan Cole looked pretty good back there, looked comfortable, didn't really miss any of his passes. And running back Braxton Thurman, not the biggest guy out there, but, man, he can run.
Yeah, a little rider hooks in him, just a little short, not really short running back, but just, boy, does he run hard.
So with the game looked at, we will move on to our new segment here for pregame, which is the MVPs of the week. We're choosing one player from all of the matchups around the GMC to highlight and go into kind of how they really impacted the game this week. And there was an apple on our table, not really sure where that.
I got hungry.
It's a long show, I understand.
Yeah.
We'll start with the East game, and I think the East MVP this week is going to be Ryder Hooks, who really obviously had a little bit of a slow start to the season coming off the injury, but in this last game, especially in that second half, he really came to life. He ended with over 100 all-purpose yards, and, man, I mean, he looked like he's going to playoff form, Ryder Hooks.
Yeah, we talked about JT Kidna and the receivers, but MVP of this game was Ryder Hooks. He did get shut down in the first half. I think that's the worst I've seen him run the ball, worst performance I've seen him have in a first half. But that second half, 3 rushing touchdowns and 85 yards on all game. And he had 4 catches for 40 yards. It was just, the second half was the Ryder Hooks show.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of that first half was the O-line not getting as much of a push as they wanted. But, man, in that second half, Ryder Hooks was able, it felt like he was able to find all the holes. He had some great vision, and he was using his strength. I mean, he was throwing those Middletown linebackers off of him, and he seemed to constantly get into that secondary. And he's really emerging as that, honestly, that running back 1 in the GMC if he keeps up like this.
Yeah. Right now it's Tyler George, but if he keeps playing like this, like you said, he should be number 1 soon.
We move on to the MVP of the Hamilton game, where they upset Princeton, to say the least. I mean, I don't think any of us saw that coming, and all that credit goes to running back for Hamilton, Grayson Goldsmith, who had 166 yards on 25 carries and 3 rushing touchdowns on the day. And man, I don't think any of us saw that coming from Hamilton, and Grayson Goldsmith had a heck of a week.
Absolutely not. We looked at the score at halftime, when it was the halftime of our game, and we saw 27-0, and I was just shocked. Could not believe it. I don't know what happened to Princeton. I watched highlights from the game, and it just seemed like the whole night Hamilton's offense, especially their O-line, was just creating holes for Grayson Goldsmith to run through. And when he did find those holes, he got into the secondary and he bulldozed people. It was just a night to forget for Princeton's defense, and Grayson Goldsmith, heck of a game. 25 carries, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's just absurd, especially on a very stout Princeton defense who has played great all year. I don't really know what happened in this one. Just O-line creating holes, Grayson Goldsmith running through them.
Yeah, it was kind of puzzling to see. Princeton, obviously, like you said, a team known to shut down good running backs, and Grayson Goldsmith just ran all over them, and really helping Hamilton kind of emerge themselves here late in the season as a little bit of a contender, maybe even, especially with Princeton losing that game. It opens up the GMC, which we'll talk about a little bit later coming into the matchups. We move on then to the Mason MVP of the week, and it's another running back. It's Brandon Dunn, who had 169 yards on 16 carries. He averaged over 10 yards a carry, had a 56-yard run, and a touchdown, and he really is the reason that Mason got that win.
Yeah, when you average 10.6 yards a carry as your starting running back, of course you're going to put up big numbers. They got the win over Fairfield, 31-13, and if you're Fairfield, your team's kind of spiraling right now, but just what a game for Brandon Dunn. I mean, he's not even the starting running back. They had Temi Adesanya in there, might have gotten injured, but just what a game from him.
We move on to the Lakota West MVP of the week, and who else than Sam Wiles, the quarterback standing in that pocket, only threw 9 passes, had 156 yards off of 6 completions, and 4 of those completions were touchdowns, as well as 1 on the ground, and man, he had himself a night.
I mean, what stands out to me the most is those 6 completions for 156 yards. When nearly all of your passes are going for long plays and 4 of them were touchdowns, that's just, to me, an insane night. And he did, I think, even better on the ground. I don't have his ground stats pulled up, but he went well over 100 yards and another score on the ground. It was just a huge night for Sam Wiles.
Yeah, West was really running that option all game, and Wiles was really taking advantage of that. And obviously, Colerain, a weaker defense, maybe second to worst defense in the GMC, but Sam Wiles still taking advantage of that, and obviously showing he is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the GMC, especially using his legs, like you said, had over 100 yards rushing, and man, he was an X factor on that field. Mm-hmm. So moving on to our final MVP of the week, it's going to be the Oak Hills quarterback, Max Suppi, who also, like Sam Wiles, had a pretty good day through the air and a good day on the ground. He ran for 187 yards on 15 attempts, had an 89-yard run and 3 touchdowns on the ground, as well as 149 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns to no interceptions. I mean, you can't have a better game than Max Suppi did this week.
I mean, honestly, I'm not shocked, though. You're playing Sycamore. Any competent quarterback could have a huge game against Sycamore, but nonetheless, I mean, that is an absurd stat line. 187 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns, 149 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no fumbles. I mean, have a night, but like I said, playing against Sycamore, kind of expect that from a team like Oak Hills.
Yeah, and he did have a great performance. Obviously, though, he'd probably like to see that completion percentage come up. He was only 7 for 16, so a little bit below 50%, but nonetheless, man, those stats speak for themselves, and he is another factor, and really the key factor of that Oak Hills offense, the only thing they've really got going for them at the moment. So it's that time of the pregame show where we move on to our predictions of the week. And we will start with Hamilton, who's going on the road to play a struggling Fairfield team. Yeah, Beck, what are your thoughts about this one?
I mean, Hamilton's coming off the huge upset, and Fairfield is spiraling right now. I don't see this one being close. Hamilton is cementing themselves as one of the top teams in the GMC. That's what they're trying to do. Because right now, I believe they're 4th. And beating Princeton, they're showing like, hey, we're one of the top teams. So I expect another big game out of them. They're going to beat Fairfield 38-7.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you here. Hamilton's coming off of, I think is honestly the biggest upset of the season. I think everyone thought Princeton was just going to roll along, win the GMC. They had their chances to lose, and I mean, they played well. And beating East, we really thought that was going to be it for the GMC. But man, I mean, I don't even know what happened in that game, to be honest. Hamilton was just running all over them, and they are really emerging as a GMC contender with that being open now. And if they can get a few wins here late in the season, they have a shot at it. Fairfield obviously not had the best last few weeks, so I am kind of predicting a blowout here, 42-6 for Hamilton in this game. We move on to Mason at Middletown. This is our game of the week. It should really be a good one. Middletown started undefeated. They've really fallen off these last couple weeks once they started playing those top of the GMC teams, and I think they need a win here if they want to get back to being in the contention for at least being in the better half of the GMC.
Well, yeah, well said. And honestly, this game is a toss-up. I really have no clue because Middletown, you started 4-0, but you're getting exposed by the top two teams of the GMC right now. And then you're playing at Mason, who is honestly playing great ball right now, putting up 31 points on Fairfield. And Mason's defense is, I think, amazing. While they are in the lower half of the GMC as a full team, their defense has allowed one of the lowest amount of points scored in the GMC. And it's something that you're going to have to keep an eye on for this game. Middletown obviously has those two great receivers and a quarterback that can get them the ball, but interesting to see what's going to happen here. When Mason played East, and you know East's pass game is incredible, Mason shut JT Kidna down. I think he had his lowest amount of passing yards on the full season, so this one's going to be interesting, but I think Middletown, they're kind of wobbling right now, but I think they'll right themselves against Mason. They're going to win 26-13.
Yeah, I really think this is going to be a really close game, and it's definitely our game of the week for sure. Like you said, Mason has had some shines on defense. Like you said, they are a pretty stout defense, but I think Middletown has kind of found their footing again. They had a little bit of success against East later on into the game, but it was obviously too little too late. And I think this is the game where Middletown kind of comes back and says, hey, maybe we're not the best in the GMC, but we still can't keep up with the GMC. And I think Middletown comes away with a 27-21 victory. So with that, we move on to Oak Hills at Princeton, and Princeton shocked everyone by losing to Hamilton. We've talked about it a couple times now, and it wasn't even a close blowout. They didn't score a single point. They're going to be angry this week. They're going to be fired up, and they take on Oak Hills at home. I think this is a game where Princeton gets back set right on their feet.
Yeah. Oak Hills, I think, in my opinion, they're a subpar football team, especially in the GMC. They throw too many turnovers, and their defense has been exposed in the big games. And Princeton's going to play really angry after they got embarrassed by Hamilton, and they're going to want to win this one. I think they do it, 42-12.
Yeah, I think Oak Hill's defense just isn't good enough to keep up with Princeton's offense that is going to be fired up to put points on the board. I think this is also going to be kind of a blowout. I do think Oak Hill scores a couple touchdowns. I think it's going to be 35-14 for Princeton in this game. Next up, we have another game. Lakota West is traveling to Sycamore. And 68-0 for West is my prediction for that game.
What a joke of a game. 64-0.
And with that, we'll move on to the Lakota East game for this week, which honestly very similar to the Lakota West at Sycamore game. East is taking on Colerain at Colerain. We will be streaming that game here in a moment, but first we'll talk about it. And I mean, this one shouldn't be hard for East at all. A chance for some of those guys to pad stats. Obviously, can't fall into a trap game, but Colerain hasn't won a game in over 2 years, and I don't think this is the game where they get that win.
I don't think head coach John Kidna is going to allow East to fall into that trap game. Expect JT Kidna to have a huge night. I expect for the first time this year, he might get over 300 passing yards. Might see the passing touchdowns. I think Zion Neal is going to have a field day. Ryder Hooks even. I mean, Colerain's run defense and just their whole team is not going to be able to keep up at all. I have a 56-14 East win, and Colerain getting 2 garbage time touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think this is also going to be a huge day for that East defense to get some turnovers. Obviously, starting quarterback for Colerain has 9 fumbles on the season and 4 interceptions. Not even really sure how that's possible.
That is
but
absurd.
I mean, I think Cohen Reap and those 2 safeties like we talked about earlier, Connor Cruz and Cole Miranda, are going to have a chance for some turnovers that they want to take advantage of. And I, for this game, also have a blowout, 63-14. I do think Colerain might score a couple late against some of those backups that come in. But I honestly think this is a game where East can just pad their stats and prove themselves to be even more dominant as they move on next week to take on Sycamore, which should be another easy win for them. Mm-hmm. So with that, we want to thank you so much for watching this week's take of Pregame, and we hope you'll stick around for the stream that's coming on in just a moment, where Lakota East will take on the Colerain Cardinals. Thank you for watching. I'm Max Earl. This is Beck Lucas.